To order and give me a roll call, please.
Commissioners Markham? Here. Middleton?
Here.
Gershenson?
Here.
McGilvray?
Here.
Quarles?
Here.
Howell?
Here.
Long?
Here.
Cowell?
Here.
Zach?
Here.
Yes, sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Now the Pledge of Allegiance. Got my flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
justice
all.
for all.
Okay, I need a motion for the approval of the minutes, please. Commissioner Quarles, supported by Commissioner, who wants to support, Markham. Any questions about the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I need an approval of the agenda, please. A motion for approval of the agenda. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Any discussion, questions about the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Do I have any public comment?
Currently, your public comment lines are open. There are no callers and there are no online submissions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
With seeing that there, and hearing that there is no public comment, I'm going to close public comment. And I need a motion for the communications. So moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Is there any discussion on the communications? Any questions, any discussion? Seeing that there isn't any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. There is no consent agenda. Now we move on to the regular agenda. Item number 1, Central Services, Aviation Division, Airport Land. Recommend to board lease Becker Hangar LLC. And we have Cheryl Bush, our head of the airport. So welcome, Cheryl. Do you want to give
Good morning,
a quick?
thank you.
I need a motion. You moving it, Commissioner Middleton?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes,
with
ma'am.
Commissioner Quarles supporting, and thank you for waving to me. Okay, we've got a motion and support, and Cheryl, you want to give us a quick overview?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, the Becker Hangar, you'll notice, has a backdated effective date to April 1. We've been in some negotiations with this group. There was some discussion about a change in the configuration of their parcel, and they had an interested buyer. They're still in negotiations with that buyer. So unfortunately, it did not get accomplished in April. We kept thinking through the pandemic that we would be renewing any moment, but here we are today. The negotiations have not been completed, and we're going to go ahead and renew with the Becker Group. They requested a 30-year term, which is similar to another lease that we just signed with an entity at the airport, and it's the same entity that's interested in this lease, so we went ahead and agreed with the airport committee's approval to a 30-year term. Other than that, it's standard land lease.
Now, I'm trying to see if we got the correction.
I believe it was emailed, so we'll just need to clarify the motion is for the corrected one.
Okay, so I want to make sure that motion is for the corrected length of time. Is that agreeable? Okay. And then I have Commissioner Middleton. You have something to say?
Yes.
Question.
I wanted to bring it up before. I just got a amendment list for 812 from Mike, and I can't open, or it's trying to load the document. Is that document this agreement with 30 years rather than 20 years?
That's correct.
Okay, Cheryl. Okay, so it's still trying to load, but I won't worry about that.
Excuse me, Commissioner Middleton, that amendment list is the Finance Committee, this is Lynn, the Finance Committee amendment list for the resolutions. So I think that's what Michael had just sent out this morning.
Oh, it's not
So-
the, okay, I didn't.
If you're talking about, there's a report that says Finance Committee amendment list as of August 12th.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the amendment list. I don't think that's related to this airport item.
okay. So are we going to discuss that email that Mike sent out?
Yeah,
Or
during
it's
the, for the budget hearing process, just the status report of all the amendments that have taken place since
Okay.
the
The ones
Finance-
that
or
we
since the
voted
draft
on?
recommended budget.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, then I won't worry about it opening. When it finally opens, I'll look at it then. So. Okay, thank you. I'm all done, Helene.
You're muted, Helene.
Commissioner McGilvray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Cheryl, I'm just curious, is the 28 cents per square foot, is that the going rate for that type of building?
Yes, in fact, all of our leases are at 28 cents per square foot.
Okay, thank you.
That was a 2019 rate, and they'll be adjusted again in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 1, Commissioners Markham,
Yes.
Middleton, Commissioner Middleton,
Yes,
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes,
Pearl,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously, 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Item-
much.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Item number 2, Information Technology Third Quarter 2020 Development Appropriation Transfer. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Colwell, supported by Commissioner Long. And Mike Tim, are you with us today? Thank you. Here's Mike Tim, our Head of Technology.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. So this is our normal quarterly request that we bring in to transfer the funds from the general fund into IT and also funds from the proprietary funds. These are for the development and support services that we provided over the previous quarter. So the request is to approve this fund transfer.
Do we have any questions about this? Mike, I have a question. How does this compare to other quarters? Are we seeing increase because of COVID? How's it compare?
You know, actually, it's fairly standard every quarter because our staffing numbers don't change. And these are projects that have been mapped out in our master plan. So some of the work that we have done that is COVID related That fund transfer has not occurred yet. We're still working with fiscal and with the consultant on whether or not that work will be eligible for fund transfer or for COVID dollars. But this is fairly typical because we're working against a master plan that's been in place.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on this item? Yes, Commissioner Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the exec went it to 102,000 year to date. Is that because of the COVID? This quarter is only 14,000, but quite a bit. Was it most of it added in the second quarter?
So typically the support that we're providing for the executive office is in the form of communications. That would be a typical large chunk, if you will, of our hours. The team that supports, and there has been a lot of, work that goes into press conferences, but also, the reconfiguration of the phone system to support call-in centers would have gone into that bucket as well. But so there probably in this transfer, though, there should not be any COVID related specifically. We are tracking that separately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 2, Commissioners Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Portal,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
thank you. Motion carries. So item number 3, information technology, request for approval of construction license and lease agreement amendments and lease agreement amendments with certain governmental entities. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Markham, supported by Commissioner McGillivray.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So this particular resolution, and I believe Jody Hall is on the call if there's detailed questions that I can't answer, but this is related to our radio project, the new public safety radio system. And as some of you are aware, but maybe not all, many years ago, the county constructed for the existing radio system, paid for the construction of radio towers throughout the county. And then those were, in many cases, deeded over to the CVTs. So we put in place lease agreements with the CVTs so that we could lease the space on that tower for the radio system. And then the CVT, the entity, was responsible for if they had other tenants that they wanted to allow on those towers, they were allowed to do that. But because of the new radio system, we have some work to do. Sometimes it's structural, sometimes it's just adding antennas. Sometimes we have to add additional air conditioning or power conditioning. So essentially this resolution is to allow Chairman Woodward to sign updated lease agreements with the CVT. So these are all intergovernmental agreements. There's no budget amendment required. It's really just the updates of existing legal agreements.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
On item number 3, Commissioners Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Now we move on to item 4, Health and Human Services, Health Division, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Local Community Stabilization Authority funding. I need a motion, please. Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Kowal. And we have Leanne Stafford, our health officer, with us.
Yes, good morning. So this funding was provided to us through MDHHS. It's due to increased demand for our essential local public health services. So over the years, the demand has continued without additional funding. So this is specific for those programs. And so as we received the money, we found some immediate needs that we really needed to focus on. And the additional money we have put aside because we really need to evaluate what our other needs are and look at the staffing models and other items that we may need in the future. So we will be asking for this to be carried forward, knowing that we will not be able to spend the money by the end of this fiscal year. So for the immediate need, we are looking for an administrator of medical services. That is really to look at the increased demand that we've got in the laboratory and the other services in the clinic that we provide. We're also looking for to hire 2 new epidemiologists. As you all have seen, that has been a very vital role, especially during this COVID time. And there's a lot of need for epidemiologists with data review, and we use them for our community health plan and improvement plan. And then we also are looking to increase the hours for our public health technician, which are hearing and vision technicians. When we went to Workday, we had to cut their hours, not significantly, but quite a bit, some in half. And we really need all those hours as the hearing and vision techs are in the schools, providing those services. They do early education for those services. And so we will also be increasing their hours so that every position has up to 1,000 hours to be able to work with the schools. So that's about it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioner Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Leah, this morning at Optimist, we had a person from Clarkson Schools speak, and they talked about at least 30% of the students taking virtual classes. And then as time goes on, if there's an outbreak or something, there will be all virtual classes. How are the nurses doing hearing and sight going to be working if there's no kids in school?
So currently with hearing and vision techs, at the beginning of the school, we start with early education. So, 3rd and 4th graders. So that's our focus will be at the beginning, and then we'll roll into hearing and vision in the schools. It's all schools. It's not just public, so private, charter. So we will adjust our schedules based on the schools that are in service. So now that schools are starting to make that final determination, we'll start putting schedules in place. At this time, the state has told us we're going to continue on and do testing, obviously, for those places that are open. But we also do testing in our offices. So if a child is tested and they need a follow-up, or maybe they're not at the school at that time, so we may be looking at doing some additional testing there. We will reevaluate when we know how many schools are open, at the beginning of the school year, and adjust our scheduling at that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions? I have a question, Leanne. Are we going to have trouble hiring epidemiologists? I would think that they're in great demand these days.
So we recently hired an epidemiologist, and we had quite a few applications. And so just hearing that there was going to be maybe epidemiologist positions, we've already had people reach out to us that they have students that have graduated that are looking for positions. So I don't think we'll have any issue maybe finding people with that degree. They may be moving from other states, but we had a large pool of individuals this last time.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I was concerned because it's one of these specialty items that sometimes we have trouble recruiting. So that's great. Do I have other questions for Leanne on this? Seeing none, please call the roll.
On item number 4, Commissioners McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles. Commissioner Quarles, are you still there?
First, why don't you come back to her? Her camera is
Okay.
dark.
Commissioners Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Quarles, Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried.
thank you. Move on to item number 5, Circuit Court Family Division, Oakland County Child Care Fund Budget. And I need a motion, please. Commissioner Gershenson, supported by Commissioner Long. Thank you. And we have Tina. You say Lathers, is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you. Welcome. You
Thank
want to tell us what we're voting on? A little overview?
Well, I'll let John Cooper Ryder start.
Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is John Cooper Ryder. I'm the business manager for the Circuit and Probate Courts. Also here by phone is Tom Shire, who's our director of the local MDHHS office. Judy Overall, who's the manager of our Children's Village. And I believe she also has with her Lori Strong from Children's Village. Tina Lathers, who you just mentioned, our chief of our juvenile casework. And I'm not sure if Scott Hamilton is here. He was going to come as well. He's the manager of our juvenile court operations. We're here this morning to seek your approval to submit the fiscal year 2021 Child Care Fund budget to the state of Michigan. As you can tell by listening to all the individuals present, this is a very collaborative effort between the Circuit Court, the County Executive Office, Children's Village, and the state and county's MDHHS offices. The Child Care Fund is a special funding arrangement between the county and the state. It was established by statute, whereby child care costs are shared 50-50 between the state and the county. The funding is to support placement costs as well as program service costs for use in both the child protective proceeding cases as well as delinquency cases. All the costs are only for use under the Circuit Court's jurisdiction. Up until last year, the county always paid 100% of the use costs up front, and then the state would reimburse the county 50%. Then along came the state pays first legislation. And under the state pays first for child protective proceeding cases only, the state pays 100% now of the costs up front, and the county repays it at 50%. Delinquency cases still remains the same. The county still pays 100% upfront, and the state reimburses at 50%. For purposes of this plan and budget, costs are broken into 3 categories for delinquent youth: they're out-of-home costs, in-home care costs, and county/court operated facilities, which is our Children's Village operation. For child protective proceeding case costs, they're still categorized by foster care supervised, foster care agency placed, institutional, and independent living. This year, the Child Care Fund budget plan reflects gross expenditures of $31.64 million, with the net expenditure of approximately $27.84 million. This is down about 3.4% from last year, which is basically related to a reduction in out-of-home placement. All of these expenditures are included in the county executive's recommended budget. They're just packaged a little bit differently for submission to the state based on the state requirements. Finally, this budget also reflects $2.46 million for child protective proceeding expenditures, which represents the county's 50%, which we talked about earlier. We're looking for your approval to submit this to the state, and here to answer any other questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions here? Commissioner Middleton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This child care fund, is that funded out of the general fund for the state? If it is there any provision for that being reduced tremendously because of sales tax income being so low and schools going to be requiring more money? Is there any provision that, say, this fund is cut in half by the legislature? How would, and we've already spent the money, or are we guaranteed that reimbursement? I just need to know those questions, John.
Yeah, Commissioner, I'm not familiar that there's anything like that going on at the state. I do believe it has its own budget within the state line item, so I'd have to check with them to see if there's any talk about reducing it, but I haven't heard any specific talk about that.
Okay. If
I can check for you.
I think the state is going to be really hard pressed to support a lot of the programs they've done in the past, and we just have to be aware of that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll take a look and see if I can find out, get you some information on that, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions? I have a question. Might be Jody. Our census is down under the child care fund. Is that correct? I know that Children's Village is lower. What about other cases under this? Are we seeing less? Are we seeing more? Because that impacts the money that we spend on this.
Was that question for Jody, did you say, or did you?
Well, I don't know if it's Jody or you, John, or, I don't know. What's our,
I can tell you that we typically have, for the last few years, have been it's been pretty static. I mean, the number of youth that we have, it's pretty much the same every year. However, it did go down somewhat last year. It reduced both delinquency cases and neglect cases. And Tom probably could speak to the child protective proceeding cases better, but yeah, it did go down a little bit last year. And the line items are, which is why I mentioned the private placement line item did reduce this year in the budget a little bit. Tom, I don't know if you want to speak to the child protective proceeding.
Is your question specifically in regards to Mandy's place? And I can.
I'm talking overall. Are we
Overall.
seeing, increase because of COVID? Is it staying, because that impacts this line item?
Yes, good question. We have seen a reduction in regards to the amount of CPS intakes or referrals that we've been receiving, mostly due to school not being in session, kids not being out, for teachers and others to make referrals in regards to the CPS related type issues. And that has had an impact in regards to the number of kids that we have in care. It's gone down somewhat. So we're getting less referrals, which ultimately means less kids in care, primarily due to COVID. Now, we've been seeing an uptick recently, and it's starting to go back up to where we've been in the past. So it's difficult to make a determination in regards to the upcoming year as far as how the number of kids that we'll have in care and the number of kids that will have a county cost. So we have been impacted by COVID, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 5, Commissioner Squirrels,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Coal,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gilray,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So we have item number 6, which is Bradford versus Oakland County. And I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to consult with our attorney on pending litigation. So who wants to move this? Commissioner Gershenson, supported by Commissioner Long. Okay, and then I guess, do I need a voice vote or a roll call? Roll
Yeah,
call?
we could do a roll call on that.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioners Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
McGilvray? Yes, okay. Quarles
Yes.
and Zach?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays. Anybody who's not part of the closed session should sign off.
Yeah.
Sorry, she'll text me when we're back on the air. I'd send her a text.
Okay.
Pam, how do you notify other people that went off?
What do you mean, other people?
Yeah, people that we asked to leave the room, now you ask them to come back.
That's a
Like,
good-
Michael, I let Commissioner Wyford know, and
Okay.
Michael's been letting people know that are coming in for the budget hearings.
okay, thank you.
We are now live.
Okay, so I need to entertain a motion that to support to support the discussion no, I need a motion that Corporation Council be authorized to proceed in accordance with the directives discussed in closed session. Who wants to move that? Commissioner Middleton, supported by Commissioner Quarles. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
Middleton?
Yes.
Gershenson?
Yes.
McGillivray?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. And any other issues to come before regular Finance Committee meeting? And then we will move into budget hearings. Do you want a 5-minute recess and start at 10:30? I see. Okay. Let's recess for 5 minutes. Okay. And we'll be back with you. Thanks.
Commissioner Long, are you still there?
and welcome. We will start with the circuit court to budget hearing. And I want to welcome, I see our Chief Judge, Shalina Kumar, and I don't know if you want to kick things off.
Thank you,
And
Commissioner Zach.
I welcome all of you, and just a little bit of housekeeping. We have better sound if we mute, if only the speaker is on audible and that we all mute, and we don't get the same feedback. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Judge. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Commissioner Zach, and good morning to all the rest of the commissioners. As you know, I'm Shalina Kumar. I'm the Chief Judge of the Circuit Court. I have some staff members attending with me. Suzanne Hollier, friend of the court, and with her is Jeanette LaShawn, Pam Monville, our Deputy Court Administrator, John Cooperrider, our Business Division Manager, Kevin Offner, our Court Administrator, and I believe Scott Hamilton is also with us, the Manager of the Juvenile Division. Before you this morning is the County Executive's recommended Circuit Court budget for the fiscal year 2021. We've had a chance to review that budget and support the recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding next year's budget, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you all, the entire board, for its past and current support, especially as it relates to funding court technology. During this pandemic, it's proven that technology is very important to sustaining the court's operations. For the past few months, many of our employees have worked from home and are getting a tremendous amount of work accomplished because they have access to their work product through GoToMyPC, the ability to view and route electronic court documents, and instant communications via email, text messages, and calls with the judges and other employees. Thanks to innovations such as e-filing and Court Explorer, litigants and attorneys can file documents, have access to the court's calendar and register of actions, and can view case files electronically. Our judges have handled countless proceedings by video conference, and the public can attend these virtual proceedings just as they were in the courtroom. Other than having to scramble a bit to obtain additional GoToMyPC and Zoom licenses when we realized the magnitude during the duration of this pandemic, we were remarkably well situated from a technology standpoint to handle our business with little trouble or disruption of service. The only thing we haven't been able to do by decree of the Michigan Supreme Court is to hold our jury trials. Other than that, the court has been able to handle its workload thanks to the technology I just mentioned and support given by the Board of Commissioners. With respect to the jury trials, we won't be able to hold jury trials until the health department data on the daily number of new COVID cases and the positivity rate of COVID tests show a sustained downward trajectory for a few weeks. We also want to be sure that jurors, litigants, and attorneys and the public are afforded all the protection possible from exposure to COVID when we receive approval to hold jury trials again. So I want to thank the Finance Committee and the Board of Commissioners for support of the court. My door is always open, as it always has been, and I'd be happy to visit with you or answer any questions you ever have about court operations, and my staff would as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
First of all, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Long, but I just want to say kudos to you and your staff for keeping going and adapting to this crazy pandemic. And you know, like the Board of Commissioners, we didn't miss a beat, but we had to adapt. And, you know, I think it's wonderful all that you've done. And I've heard really amazing comments from attorneys that have come before the court. So thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Long.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You somewhat answered the jury trials. How far, how long do you think it's going to be when we get the green light to go in person for you to catch up? Would you need additional staffing? How long do you think what are you guys predicting? I'm worried about.
Once we're you're asking what the backup will be once we're in the phase.
Yes, I'm worried about your, like an overload on everyone there.
It's we're not going to need additional staffing. The judges will work with their existing staff. We're going to have to work with each other. Even when we get, we have 4 phases. I don't know if you guys are aware. We have 4 phases given to us by the Supreme Court. Phase 1 was when we had to do everything by home, absolutely no one in the building. Phase 2 is the phase we're at now, which is still do everything from, via remote. But if you had to have an in-person hearing, you can, but you should avoid doing so. Cannot have jury trials, would only approve in a certain situation. We could not get approval phase 2 for a jury trial. Phase 3 is when we can start having jury trials and start opening things up a little bit more. The Supreme Court is still wanting us to do everything we can do remotely, even in phase 3. They want us to continue to do remote hearings, even when the pandemic is over. They're really happy with how the remote hearings have gone. But once we're in phase 3, we can start having jury trials, but it's not going to be where all of a sudden every judge can have a trial whenever they want, the way it was before. We're going to have to share courtrooms because of the social distancing and the guidelines that we have for us. We can't have multiple judges having multiple trials at one time. So we're going to have to work with each other. We just had a meeting yesterday where we're asked judges to give us a list of their priority cases. Obviously, the criminal cases, the people who are in custody are going to get priority, and we're just going to have to work with each other in terms of scheduling out our trials. So it's going to take us a while, before we can deal with all the trials we need to deal with. And getting to the civil trials is going to be even longer because we have to do our in-custody criminal trials first. So those people are not sitting in jail unnecessarily. So it's not going to be easy, but we're not going to need additional staffing. We're not going to need additional money. We're just going to have to work through it and step by step get through it.
Thank you. It sounds like you have your plan, and I wish you guys luck so you don't get it all at once. And it sounds like, though, it's going to move forward smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Gershenson.
So thank you, and good to see you, Chief Judge.
Good to see you, Commissioner.
I'm just curious about the resident that does want a jury trial and requests a jury trial. Isn't that their right to have one? And what happens to them?
So are you talking like in a criminal case if someone's in custody, or just anybody?
Anybody.
So per the court rules, there's always good cause not to give a jury trial when requested. And the Supreme Court has told us that, for instance, with in-custody cases, the criminal cases, there's that 180-day rule, if you guys don't know, speedy trial rule. The Supreme Court has given us direction that the good cause exception under the court rule gives us good cause not to give someone a trial when they've asked for it. The Supreme Court is in charge right now of whether we get approved for jury trials or not, and they have not approved us. So our hands are tied right now as to being able to give jury trials, but the Supreme Court has told us the court rule gives us protection on that because of the good cause exception.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Markham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming before us today, Chief Judge. I can only imagine how complicated this has all been for you and your organization. So I want to talk about something just a little more philosophical. Through this process of everybody being locked down and COVID and all, we have diverted a lot of our prisoners to non-jail options for sentencing. And I'm wondering if there's any role you or your organization has to play in thinking about where we're going forward so that we are treating offenders with better options, keeping our costs down, all of the things that I think we're learning by having less people in the jail. So I'd like your comments on that.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot in terms of, it's going to take time. We've been obviously letting people out when this whole thing started. We worked with the Sheriff's Department. They would go through and give us recommendations. Each judge would be given a list of inmates who either had health issues, were vulnerable in some way, were elderly. The jail would make recommendations to us on people that maybe we should look at releasing. The judges did a great job of releasing most of those people if they didn't present a danger to society. I think we'll have to wait some time to see the effect of that. Were they committing crimes when they were out? Were they still showing up for their court hearings? Were they complying with pretrial services? I think hypothetically, if a year from now we look back and we had good results from all those people that we let out and gave personal bonds to, if we take a look at the statistics on all those things I just mentioned, I would hope that the judges would see the benefit of having people on a Scram tether for alcohol testing, or having someone on a GPS tether if there's a concern about contact with the victim or someone leaving a residence or leaving the state. There are plenty of other options. So I think it'll be interesting to see the statistics of how things went with these people that we've let out that normally would have been in. And I think if things went well with that group and we didn't have very many issues, I would think that the judges would take a look at that in terms of going forward in the future with respect to giving personal bonds. Now, obviously, there's that legislation that they're working on, the bond reform, right? Where we're either going to, give a bond or deny a bond. It's either denying bond or letting people out. That, I think that legislation is probably going to pass. So this bond issue and having people in custody pretrial might be taken care of with that anyway. So, we'll have to look at all these probably in 6 months to a year from now and see where we're at.
Thank you.
Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Judge. I was just wondering, everybody's we're all focused on COVID right now, but what other issues do you have that you're considering you're going to have to deal with in the future, like the cell phones in the courtroom, which I was on jury duty one time. It drove me nuts to sit around all day and not have my cell phone, but I know it's going to have some implications for the courtrooms. There's that, and I'm sure there's other issues that you see upcoming that are going to impact your budget.
Right now things are pretty good. I was always, I never liked that cell phones couldn't be brought into the building, or people were having to leave their cell phones out of the building. And I was always a proponent of doing something to either allow them to bring cell phones in, or at least have them have a place for people to put their cell phones. So I don't mind that the Supreme Court did that. We have a policy in place in terms of the judges being able to monitor their courtrooms and manage cell phone use in the courtroom. It's gonna, it just started and now people aren't in the courtroom, so we can't really tell yet the effect. I was, talking before about the need for a deputy to monitor. That might still be a problem, but I just haven't been able to see the effect of this yet, because obviously it started in May and no one's been in the courtroom. So that's probably something maybe we'll talk about with you next year. We'll have a better idea of the effect on the judges in the courtroom proceedings with people having cell phones. Obviously, we're concerned about people sneaking things in and videoing and recording, and we're not going to be able to see it or catch it, and then what they do with those recordings. So I don't have enough information right now on how that's going to affect us, that specific issue. But other than that, I don't see any issues. I think we're doing well with the budget as is. Kevin, I'll defer to you if I'm not thinking of something that we see coming up in the pipeline. Am I forgetting something, Kevin? You're on mute, Kevin. Kevin, you're muted.
Kevin, unmute.
There's the whole MIDC thing that's out there that we really don't know. I just saw an email just now that the MIDC passed the next series of, what do they call them, standards, but those still have to go to the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Committee or Bureau, and I don't know if those will get passed. Judge, you alluded to the Supreme Court's encouragement that even post-pandemic, we have to think about online dispute resolution, making court more accessible to people without even having to physically come to court. We are still being encouraged to consider video conferencing as a regular tool in our toolbox for handling court proceedings. There's the expansion of e-filing, which has just recently happened. We have our case management system replacement that we're looking at doing. So those are some big projects that are upcoming.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Colwell. Any other questions? I have a question, Commissioner Gershenson.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to address if you're seeing the increase in family domestic violence cases. We've been hearing a lot about those kind of issues really surfacing since people are spending a lot more time together. So I'm just wondering, are you seeing an uptick, and also are we developing other options to send those folks to?
Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have statistics on if we have an increase in domestic violence cases or family disputes. So even anecdotally, I haven't heard that. I haven't seen it on my own criminal docket. Kevin, do we know if there's been an uptick in that?
The only thing that I know, Judge, is that about a month or two ago, the prosecutor, there was an article in the paper, she mentioned that there was an uptick in domestic violence charges, but I couldn't tell you the caseload numbers at this point.
So obviously, when I was asked to look at inmates for release and they were domestic violence or assaultive crimes, I took a hard look at those. But, you know, we have things like GPS tethers where we can monitor people. We can put people on home arrest, house arrest. And that's how we can monitor them and keep them out of jail and make sure they don't have contact with the victim. And then if they have contact with the victim, they're brought before us as judges, and we can send them back into custody and revoke any bond that we've given to make sure that there are no issues.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions? Commissioner McGilvray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judge, I'm just curious, of the 433 staff that you have at the circuit court, how many are working off premises?
Oh, Kevin, I'll defer to you on that one.
Well, I'll talk about, Suzanne, maybe you can address the friend of the court, but I'll talk about non-friend of the court staff. I think, Suzanne, you have about 150 people. Commissioner, we probably have about 60 to 70 people at any given time who are here in the courthouse working. For example, I'm here today and several others are as well. So that means we probably have about 180 or so non-friend of the court staff who are either furloughed, on reduced work hours and rotating in, but on a part-time basis, or working exclusively from home. We have a number of people who are working exclusively from home, and they are really getting a lot of work done. Suzanne, do you want to address friend of the court?
Sure. We have 150 staff members, and about 110 of them are working at home. We've kept our banking system open for the entire time so that we can receive cash payments, although for a while we did rely entirely on Dropbox to allow people to drop off their cash payments. And also our frontline staff who works our phones and our front desk, they're open, and our job placement office is open, and they are primarily helping the at-home workers print and mail their work. So about 40 people rotating or permanently in the building, and about 110 entirely at home.
My next question is to all of you. Do you think that once the COVID has passed us and we have a vaccine, will they all come back to work on a regular basis?
So, like I stated before, the Supreme Court has indicated to us that they would like us to continue handling some proceedings remotely as much as we can. I've discussed with the bench the possibility of allowing some employees to continue to work from home. We have not made a decision on that, but it's something we're discussing. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to say anything else about that?
Nothing to add, Judge.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to let the board know, and all of you know, that the Supreme Court keeps clearance rates to check how the courts are doing in terms of clearing their cases. And last we checked, we were at 97% clearance rate, which is extremely high, and we've gotten commended for that. So our court is doing well in terms of handling moving the cases.
Other questions? I have a question about technology. So we've been talking a lot about access. Have we had any issues for people not being able to access court services because they may not have computers at home or good broadband? Has there been any issues around technology?
I don't believe so, and I think, and Kevin can chime in here too, if there was anyone who needed to come in person for whatever reason to review something, we would make a specific appointment time for them to be able to do that if they couldn't access it remotely. Is there anything else, Kevin?
I was going to say, Judge, there have only been a handful of instances when people have indicated that they were having trouble getting access, and we were able to assist them. Probably during this whole pandemic, I've had maybe 3 or 4 of those kinds of inquiries, very few.
How about friend of the court? Any issues there?
No, Commissioner, and I'm glad you asked. We did set up an appointment system so that people could come into the building and see a person. I staffed it along with the 3 chiefs of the court. We stood at the front door and greeted people as they were coming in. And if they didn't have an appointment, we showed them how to make an appointment and sent them back to their car to do that. And appointments were immediately available. And I will say I was shocked by the lack of volume of customers who wanted to come into the building and see someone in person. I think it just spoke to how well we're responding to the needs by phone, Zoom hearing, Skype, all those technology, all the technology that's available to us. I've just continued, and we've been doing it now for, we're on our 2nd month, and I'm continually surprised by how few people are coming to the building wanting to see someone in person because they can't manage the technology. It's almost really no one.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, no news is good news. We're not getting complaints or anything. We're hearing good things. So obviously things are going well. So I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments for Circuit Court? Thank you for coming to budget hearings today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we are moving on to district court, and forgive us for running late, but we had our committee meeting went longer than imagined. So thank you for coming today. And Judge Fabricio, who is the chief judge of our 52nd District Court, I'm going to ask you to lead off and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me this morning. It's a pleasure. I'm Judge Fabrizio, and I'm the Chief Judge of the 52nd District. Just by way of introduction, and fortunately we have the same court administrators this year as we had last year, so we've had no turnover there. And they have been working effortless or countless hours to make the court operate efficiently during these tumultuous times. But we have Alex Black from Novi in the 52nd 1 District Court. Brett Derry is here in the Clarkston District Court at the 52-2 where I preside. Amy Luce in the Rochester District Court, 52-3 is with us. There you are, Amy. And Dana O'Neill with the 52-4 in Troy. We have been continuously operating uninterrupted during these extraordinary times. And as I said, that has been no easy feat, but we have, similar to Judge Kumar, obviously relied heavily and sometimes exclusively on remote court hearings. We are, of course, in the same phase as Circuit Court, phase 2 currently. We surprisingly have some different challenges from Circuit Court, but a lot of what Judge Kumar said would parallel our experiences and our circumstances. So we have similar but different challenges to those that you've just discussed with Judge Kumar. I guess some of the similar challenges I think probably are kind of obvious in these times, but some of the vast differences that we have relate to the sheer volume of cases that we experience at the district court level and how to process those, particularly during these times. We are not set up with e-filing, as circuit court has been on the e-filing platform for many years now. That certainly is an effective tool for them to have in this climate. We lack Wi-Fi in our district court facilities, and so that certainly presents a challenge, particularly when so many court hearings are being held remotely. We are at this point operating both, I guess we'll call it a hybrid, both in-person court hearings and remote hearings. I don't have a percentage breakdown for you as far as the number or percentage of cases that are held remotely versus in person, but I can say the vast majority of cases currently are being held remotely, and those cases, when necessary, are being held in person. The jury trial backlog obviously is a concern here as well. Probably a bigger concern with circuit court than with district, but nonetheless a concern here. Not only is it a challenge here, but we have facility challenges here that perhaps don't parallel with circuit court. They obviously have a much bigger facility than the district court courthouses. And if and when we are able to ultimately conduct, when we are ultimately able to conduct jury trials, there's a question as to whether or not we can conduct them here. We're just starting to explore the possibility of conducting jury selection at a remote location because in our current climate, and every division is a little bit different, we are using every square inch of our court facilities and really don't have anywhere to bring in a jury pool for selection purposes, at least to do so safely. Most of our employees have returned to work here on site, and in order to do so safely, we are utilizing health screenings, of course, each and every morning for every individual that enters the facilities. We have restructured the workstations to maintain safe social distancing with employees. And in order to do so, for example, here in the Clarkston District Court, we have taken the jury assembly room and the jury deliberation rooms, and those are now utilized for workspace cubicles for our employees. And that's similar in all the divisions. So with that, I guess I will defer to our esteemed commissioners for any comments or questions that you might have for me or my court administrators.
Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you. And thank you, Judge Fabrizio, for coming and bringing us up to date on some of your challenges. I remember that space has been a continuous issue in particularly Clarkston, I think it was.
Correct.
And so I was kind of hoping that maybe the virtual remote experiences might be helping that space issue. Is that something you're finding?
Well, I guess in the short term, while we were doing all of our court hearings remotely, yes. I mean, obviously the space concerns were not a concern at that point. And when we had, a good chunk of our staff working from home or on furlough, again, that alleviated that, but that was just a temporary situation. We do not have e-filing here, although we're hoping that we're going to be able to roll that out in the next year or two. We don't have Wi-Fi. We really are not able to operate as far as staffing effectively with our employees at home. Those employees that can work from home, most of our probation department and our IT, of course, can, but the general clerical staff really are much less effective being working from home. So we need the space there, and ultimately, when we're letting people back into the courthouse, as we are just now starting to do, the space constraints become even more prevalent because we're not able to socially distance people as we should. Obviously, we are socially distancing people, but it's making things difficult. The jury selection, I don't have a solution for that yet. We're going to be exploring all different kinds of possibilities. Things that we have discussed is possibly seeking permission from the Supreme Court to conduct jury selection, perhaps down at the county facility, although that's outside of our jurisdiction, our jurisdictional district. So we would need permission from the Supreme Court to do that. Reaching out to the schools, perhaps, if they're not using their gymnasiums or auditoriums to conduct our jury selections there. So the space constraints, to some minor level, have been not a concern during the remote hearing phase of this pandemic, but I think they're going to become more and more prevalent and problematic.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you are coming up with some creative ideas during the pandemic for the space, but I would really like to see at some point us be able to address your space limitations. What's the delay? Why don't you have e-filing, and why don't you have Wi-Fi?
Well, those are two separate issues. Circuit Court, was one of the first in the state many years ago to roll out e-filing, but now there's a statewide movement, and every court in the state is moving into e-filing, and they have it's a really slow process. They have us in phases, and we were told to expect that we will go be moving into e-filing sometime in the year 2021. We really don't know, though, exactly when that is going to roll out. The Wi-Fi, we have much more control, I think, over getting Wi-Fi than the e-filing. The e-filing is a major project. The Wi-Fi, we have been begging and pleading to get Wi-Fi set up in the district court facilities for many years, and we just haven't prevailed in getting it done. Alex Black, I think, has expressed a lot of frustration over that, and maybe you want to speak to where we're at right now with that, Alex.
Thanks, Judge. Yes, I've expressed frustration. Some of you commissioners have heard me express the frustration year after year. And we got as far as where they had them come out and survey out each of our sites. We were told after the last time we all met that we would be moving forward and could have gotten it by the end of last year. And then there were delays. IT advised us of some delays. Some of the things that were delaying us were, money, making sure that there was enough in the project. And then going forward, they came out, surveyed finally in June to all of our courts, and then just advised us via email that Mike Tim had gone back to them with some things to keep us under budget, and we were lumped in with the EOB and Circuit Court. And unfortunately, because they've lumped us in with those two projects, they've delayed us. Unfortunately, we're the ones that are working with staff here. We've been full staff for quite some time here, and without Wi-Fi, it's very difficult when people show up at the door and they want to use Zoom, but we don't want them necessarily going into the courtroom because of capacity issues, and they don't have a way to connect. So it's been really challenging. And this last email that we got last week was very disappointing to hear that now we may be able to get it by the end of this year. And our challenges are right now. We have all of the courts now have purchased what's called MiFi devices. They're in each of our courtrooms, and it just provides the a small signal inside the courtroom itself, but it doesn't provide it for the public generally. So that's what we were told most recently.
Thank you.
I saw Commissioner Middleton first, then Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is Tim still on? Could CARES Act be used to fund getting Wi-Fi into the courts? I think Mike has left us.
I asked him to rejoin. So if we can get it back on, he can answer your question, Commissioner.
Okay, Pauline, go ahead and take somebody else and I'll come back.
Commissioner Powell.
Well, actually, this is just a direct to Chairwoman Zach. I just wanted to make note of this, and I'm happy that we are bringing Mr. Timms back on the phone, because this is something that I feel we need to discuss, and if anything, look into this matter for our district courts. Thank you.
So let me just go back a year. As Alexander Black recalls, we had this discussion last year during budget hearings that they didn't have Wi-Fi. And I intervened, and I thought we were on a reasonable timetable that was agreed upon by everybody. And I did not know that we were delayed. So I do concur that we need to address this issue sooner versus later. And I thought that we had resolved this last year at budget hearing, at least set a timetable. So we're going to get Mr. Tim on, and we can address this. In the meantime, do we have other questions for our district? Commissioner Long and then Commissioner Colwell.
Well, it's on the same subject of Wi-Fi. That is absolutely ridiculous for Oakland County that district courts don't have Wi-Fi. In fact, it's embarrassing. And especially during the COVID now with, I don't know how you're even working at all. Everything's online, everything's remotely. I mean, we definitely need to get them back on the line. The project needs to be moved forward before the end of the year. And I think we all agree. I just don't know how you can even do your work without Wi-Fi. So I'm just expressing my support, and let's move it on, Thank you.
I think we have Mike on now, but he didn't have the benefit of hearing the background here.
Let me bring you up to date, Mike. So we're discussing the issue of Wi-Fi in the district courts and how it's been problematic. And as you recall, at last year's budget hearings, we heard the same thing about Wi-Fi, and I came to you and asked, what was the status? And we had a schedule, an agreed upon schedule of getting Wi-Fi into the district courts. And our understanding, what we've heard in budget hearings, is that previously agreed upon schedule has been altered, and part of it being altered even before COVID. So more importantly, I think I'm getting comments from many of the commissioners on the finance committee questioning what is going on. This is important. Why don't we have a plan for Wi-Fi in our district courts more immediately? So, okay.
And as I mentioned in the IT budget hearing of last week or 2 weeks ago, we actually will have the implementation plan, and the first resolution for the Wi-Fi implementation will be coming to the board in the next couple months. And that includes the district courts. We just finished, as the district courts are aware, we've worked very closely with them, as well as the circuit courts, the 12E and 14E building. Those buildings were surveyed, and we have the detailed engineering plans, the detailed implementation plans, and the budget estimates are being finalized right now so that I can take that to the budget task force. We already have, as we discussed, as you mentioned, Commissioner Zach, Last year, in the UCC program, our broader communication upgrade, Wi-Fi is the phase 3 of that. Our phase 1, which was the core network infrastructure of switches and our LAN communication equipment, routers, all of that had to be done. And yes, it was affected because of COVID. As we went through the final implementation, that phase 1 is nearly complete. It is complete in the court areas, and that will allow us to move forward with the Wi-Fi. So we'll have the district courts up and running. They are absolutely the first priority for this first phase of Wi-Fi, and they'll be up and running within a couple months. We're very close as far as having the proposal to the board for the funding approval. The dollars are already, I forget the correct term, Lynn can maybe help me. We have them allocated, but they're not. I'm sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
It's an assigned fund balance.
Yes, it's in the assigned fund balance. So we have to bring the resolution, obviously, just to get it moved into the project. But we are very, very close to having Wi-Fi in the district courts. The bigger courts, the circuit courts, the 12E building, that's a much more complicated building because Wi-Fi does not work very well in concrete and mesh structure buildings. So the engineering is more complicated, the installation is more complicated, but we just had very extensive meetings with Chris Bujak and the team from the circuit courts to map out and do the final configuration for that building as well. That will be part of this first phase also. So if there's other questions I can answer. I know it has taken a long time. Yes, it was partially affected by COVID. But the real issue is we had to get that core infrastructure in before we could do Wi-Fi.
Okay, I have Commissioner Powell and.
So I know we've had a lot of discussion, and like Commissioner Zach stated before, she thought that we were further along in this project. My question is, you saying a couple of months. Can we get a clearer end date or just something that we can kind of benchmark to make sure we can follow up with you all or your department to see where you all are at? I just don't want this to keep kicked down the can, getting kicked down, getting kicked away from us. And we know that this is something major that needs to be done.
Absolutely, that'll come with the resolution.
By the end of October?
The specific timing will come with the resolution when we bring the funding request.
Now, does that have to be done before we do the finalizing of the budget, Commissioner Zach, or no? Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, it's independent because we already have the assigned fund balance. It's a separate project.
Okay, I just wish that we can have a tighter time frame if possible so that we can kind of watch this process. Thank you.
Yep, we're all working on that. Thank you.
Okay, I saw Commissioner Middleton.
Yes, Joe, I was thinking that maybe Wi-Fi and the virus has created a situation where we wouldn't need a new court facility, but every day I drive by a sign that says future site of District 2 Court. I see the need is still going to be there. What's the project timeline of that ever happening?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I was elected back in 2008, I was told don't get too comfortable because we're moving. And that was 12 years ago. It's really hard to believe. But the demand certainly is still there. And as I said, if anything, maybe more prevalent now. It's been an unfunded line item in the county's budget, I think, for the past dozen or more years. And so I'm not really sure how to get that moving. I don't know that this is the appropriate time right now in this climate. But yeah, it's still certainly something that we need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Judge Fabrizio, for presenting this. I don't think it came up in discussion with your existing courtroom. The other issue that you have, that when things do come back to normal or sort of normal, there's a really big security risk. It seems like I've been in the courtroom to do the tour. It's been quite a while, but you have that narrow hallway that goes behind the courtrooms there, and bringing criminal defendants in and out. That's something else that just needs to be kept in mind, that you have significant security concerns at that building.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, the facilities issue, I mean, we have security concerns. We're not in compliance with the MIDC requirements because of the facility constraints that we have. There's a multitude of challenges that we have that we're working through, and they're only made more difficult with the facility constraints that we have.
Well, hopefully that can get solved someday soon. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Mike Tim? If not, I'm going to let him go. Thank you, Mike, for signing on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for district court? We hear your frustration, okay? And I am sorry to say that this is a year later that I'm hearing the same concern. So I think I can speak for our finance committee members. We need to move on this yesterday, and we're going to watch this. And I would encourage you to keep us posted from your perspective too, about, things that are happening or not happening, because we don't always know about these delays. So please stay in touch with, you can stay in touch with me, and I will communicate your concerns and be your advocate.
And I really appreciate the relationship that we've had and maintained with the commissioners, and thank you for your support.
And thank you for all that you're doing in this crazy time and serving the people in Oakland County the best you can. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions first? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're done with district court, and now we are moving on to treasurer's office.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, and we have Jody Weisler Defoe, our deputy county treasurer. Is that your official title?
Yes, that is my official title, and I decided to do my hearing in Committee Room A, ironically, because the Wi-Fi in the treasurer's office is not very good either. So we're looking forward to the upgrade as well.
Well, welcome and thank you. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ross Gavin's on the line as well, who is a deputy treasurer in our office. So as Helene said, I'm a Jody Weisler. Is my sound okay?
So, yeah, what we ask is that Commissioner Gershenson, you are not muted. And so, okay. And now I think everybody else is muted and the sound.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, I'm Jody Weisler Defoe, Chief Deputy Treasurer. We're here to basically present a continuation budget for the Treasurer's Office operations. We obviously recognize with the pandemic and the delinquent tax cycle that starts in March of each year, this fiscal year budget didn't have as many significant impacts as we expect future fiscal year budgets to have. We are expecting delinquent taxes to go up next year, March of 2021. Therefore, requiring kind of level resources to what we've required in the past. Just kind of historically, as we've shared with you before, real property taxes peaked in 2010 at $155 million were turned over delinquent from our local units. This year was $66.2 million. And that's nearly the same as 2019, which was 66.1 million. So very level for the last 2 years, though again, anticipating an increase next March of 2021. Tax foreclosures, as we've often reported, are drastically decreased from a peak in 2012 of 1,650 down to last year, 219 was the number of tax foreclosures in 2019. As I believe you all know, this year in 2020, we worked in coordination with our foreclosing judge, and there was no foreclosures, no tax foreclosures in 2020. Basically, you know, our office does what we've been doing. We collect real and personal property taxes. We settle with the local city, villages, and townships to help their cash flow from the delinquent tax revolving fund. We administer the land sale in years where every other year where one has existed, except for this year. We receive and disperse county funds, including payroll, invest the surplus funds. We administer the local government investment pool on behalf of many of our local CVTs. Also serve as the treasurer for many county entities, the Building Authority, Art Authority, Zoo Authority, Public Transportation Authority, and the Retirement Fund. And then we serve as the chief debt manager, participating collectively with the rest of the county in bond issuances, including numerous refundings over the last year. So most of our critical services, not all of our critical services, are statutory and required by every county treasurer in the state. Our budget basically reflects those requirements of state law for real and personal property collection, administration of the DTRF, and other outreach efforts of the treasurer's office to those people. During the pandemic, we've spent quite a bit of time cross-training staff, ensuring that we have coverage between different departments, as well as we've transitioned one of our personal property collectors to also serve as a counselor in our financial empowerment center. So when she's reaching out to businesses to try to collect personal property taxes, she's able to really focus the conversation on resources or grants that are available to those businesses to try to help them cash flow their situation and hopefully provide some money to pay their property taxes as well. We also haven't filled many open positions in the treasurer's office. We currently are at about a 15% vacancy rate. That's 7 positions out of 46. So we're pretty low staffed right now, including 3 that were vacated during the pandemic, 1 retirement and 2 that left for other jobs. What else? So we have a lot of staff that's been working from home. Especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we transitioned all of our banking team and urgent services, investment services immediately to be able to work from home. Many of those people have continued working from home. We have brought back staff that manages receiving money and deposits because we don't want any of that to leave the premises. So all of that is staying in the office and that staff is coming in. We've been actually rotating staff and to try to keep, you know, if we, thankfully, we have not had a positive case while we've been in the office. But we kind of have these teams so that if somebody does infect a team, we have another team that could step in and take over those duties. Our personal property collectors aren't doing field collections anymore. That's probably the biggest change in our operations. They're doing all of that collection over the phone, again, along with those resources that we're trying to supply. And then probably the most exciting thing, and WRC is on the phone too, so I hope I'm not taking any of their thunder, is that we worked with purchasing and WRC to put out an RFP during the pandemic for community payments or like kiosk solutions. And we did make a selection last week and those vendors are being notified. And what that would allow is people to have an option without having to come into the county to make payments by cash. They would be, there's many locations around the county where they could make those payments or even an app on their phone or by text that they could pay their delinquent tax bill or their water bill. So we're looking forward to a quick implementation there. But that's really kind of exciting news from just last week. You know, we were very happy to take advantage of the credit card waiver, which was waived from March through June. We had a lot of taxpayers very appreciative that they were given a break on those enhanced access fees. Definitely started getting some complaints in July when it was added back in, especially from current taxpayers who felt like they were being, you know, kind of not given the same allowance that delinquent taxpayers were given during those other months because their bill wasn't available until July 1st. And that's when the enhanced access fee went back on. So we have encouraged and would encourage that to be removed again temporarily, or at least during the pandemic. I think it does give people the ability to pay online, pay from their phone or whatever without having to pay those additional fees. There was a question about environmental sustainability. As the Treasurer's Office, we own a lot of land, surplus land, through the tax foreclosure process. So we believe, you know, good land stewardship is one of our fundamental goals. We protect our resources through, you know, having our contractors keep them clean and keep them mowed or snow removal, just so that they don't become blighted and don't bring down property values in the neighborhood. And you know, we also encouraging repurposing those properties to, you know, community gardens or side lots where a neighbor could build their own garden, you know, therefore helping with food insecurity in many of our urban communities, which is where a lot of our vacant land is. So I think I guess that's what I wanted to share. So happy to, you know, take any questions or answer anything about the budget or anything else.
Commissioner Powell.
Hi, I wanted to go back. I think I didn't hear you. You said the 2019 foreclosure list had how many houses on the list prior to the?
Well, not houses, but properties, 219 properties.
And then for 2020, do y'all have any projections of possibilities or no?
What was the question?
Do they have any projections for 2020? Do they have any numbers projected of properties that probably would be on the foreclosure list?
So there's no foreclosures in 2020. We won't know 2021 until near March of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Middle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jody, when March 1st comes, we make townships and local governments whole on their taxes. Basically, we buy that debt. After the sale, if the sale didn't generate enough money to pay those back taxes, then we bill back the townships or the local government. How often do we do that? Where the sales, maybe individual sales might not cover it, but the townships package should cover most of the expenses.
Sure.
Do we bill back very often?
Yeah, so Tom, I'll tell you, it really depends about community by community, frankly. We see very few chargebacks in communities with higher property values. We see very few chargebacks in a lot of our communities. But there's some communities that have seen a really significant chargebacks. Southfield has seen significant chargebacks. Royal Oak Township has seen significant chargebacks. The city of Pontiac has seen significant chargebacks every year, year after year. And so it just really depends on what properties come up, what the taxes are owed at that time, what those taxes are compared to the taxable value. Because if it ends up, like we call it, it's upside down, right? People talk about often being upside down with mortgage foreclosure and the value of a home, but it can happen in tax foreclosure as well. You know, after the recession, we saw property taxes plummet, but we had 5 or 6 years of delinquent taxes at a much higher tax rate. nobody's going to buy that property even for those delinquent taxes. So that's when a chargeback occurs. It really just, depends property by property. And frankly, we always say this, property's worth whatever somebody's willing to pay, right? A property next to your home, may be valuable to you, but isn't valuable to, somebody else showing up at the land sale who isn't willing to pay, $3,000 for it. But because it's next to your home, you might be willing to pay $4,000 or $5,000 for it. So Commissioner, there are chargebacks, unfortunately, to our local communities every year as part of this process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do I have other questions? So Jody, do you feel like our operations have gone well during COVID and,
I would say our team has been incredible and flexible and adapting to this. I mean, certainly the first month was I think, very scary for everyone, as well as trying to figure out how to work from home and, maybe work with your partner in the home or your kids at home. But frankly, I think our team has really done an outstanding job. Again, we continue to have people still working from home while some are in the office, and just trying to, create something that is fair for everyone, which I think has been the biggest challenge for me as a manager.
Do I have any other questions from Commissioner Gershenson?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good to see you, Jody. Are we anticipating a dramatic rise in foreclosures after the hiatus stops? And what are we doing? Are you preparing for that? What are you doing to outreach to residents that
Sure.
might be
So,
that?
yeah, I mean, what I would say is most of you know the foreclosure process is basically a 3-year process. So I don't anticipate a spike next year, but we could see a spike 3 years down the road. It really just kind of, in my opinion, depends on how the economy turns around and how long the pandemic extends. Will really have a huge indicator on foreclosures, unfortunately. But our outreach efforts won't slow down. We will continue all of our, resources and financial coaching. And, we run a couple entrepreneurial programs. I think Ross will be very impressed that I said that word correctly because I don't often. That really can help people in kind of this state of flux in the economy. So we'll continue all of those outreach efforts.
Any other questions or comments from Finance Committee members for the Treasurer's Office? Seeing none, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks. Moving on to the final group today, Water Resources Commissioner, and we actually are pretty much on schedule right now, which is miraculous given what we've been doing. So I want to welcome our Water Resources Commissioner, Jim Nash, and his team. And I'm going to say, Jim, why don't you kick us off with budget hearings here?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. It's always good to, see everybody. Wish I could be there. Next year, we'll all be together again, I'm sure. Anyway, so I'm just going to kind of go through the questions you asked, and then we'll take some questions. So first of all, you asked about our critical services. And really, I mean, we are in the guardians of public health, safety, and the convenience of the citizens. So that's what we do. Sewer, water, and stormwater are the biggest issues we do. We also do soil erosion control for the bulk of the communities in Oakland County. We operate and maintain 14 water systems and 17 sanitary sewer systems. A lot of them we do billing for, actually. Also, we do it for the communities through contract with the communities. A lot of these contracts are go back a significant amount of time. Farmington Hills we've been operating, maintaining their system for, I believe, over 50 years. So we have a great reputation in doing that, and we do that all over the county. We operate and maintain the city of Pontiac, their water and sewer systems, and also we own them through the what happened some years ago. Other systems that are owned by the Oakland County include the Walled Lake Novi wastewater treatment plant and 3 sewer interceptor systems. We have drains all over the county. Every community has drains of one sort or other. We also have lake levels in all these communities. We operate them all under the drain code. We have large-scale facilities like the Clinton River Water Resource Recovery Facility, formerly the Pontiac Wastewater Treatment Plant. We have the George facility that serves 14 communities in southeast Oakland County. We partner with Macomb County to operate the OMID, Oakland Macomb Interceptor System, which serves 800,000 people. And we're currently have an $80 million project going on, and we're another $20 million coming up next year. So we're very busy on that. We operate and maintain that. We're the secretary, and we do a lot of the operations for it. Explain how these critical services are allocated in the line item budget. Well, not much. We get about 3% of our budget from the general fund. Everything else comes from the community, the customers we serve, and all the do for the communities. So the department's budget is what kind of resources do we have? We have requesting that we need. We're requesting the reclassifications. We've been talking to the HR about that for a while. They're included in the budget. We're looking at the salary plan. We want to make sure that we can keep our people. It's been one of our biggest issues is keeping people in the office. There's a lot of other communities and other organizations that are offering more than we can pay. So we're working on that. We've been working on our building envelope because we have issues around that. We have more field crews than we have room for now. So we have issues that we have to address in the long term to make sure that we have the room we need. The COVID has pointed out some things that we're going to be looking at new, and so this is something that's going on as we go. But our services are growing, and we have to make sure we have the room to take that. Are we using the fund balance for operational efficiencies? No, we don't really have much to do with that. Again, the vast majority of what we do comes from the communities and the customers we serve. So there's no direct, very little that we do from the general fund. We've brought down some of our to meet our general fund services to meet the budget task, and we're looking to do internally reassigning folks for our best efficiency. We don't have anybody outside administering everything. All our programs are administered by within our staff. We have an amazing staff that again, I have a couple of my folks here, Steve Korth and Tim Prince are my managers who just do an amazing job, and we have fantastic staff. And again, we're approached by the state to help with them for a lot of the things they want to do. They ask us for advice. They ask us for input on things because we're respected statewide. When we're looking at this, the value of what we do is measured not by just internally by us, but how our customers receive our operations maintenance and all the other things we do. So we have to keep up with them to make sure that we're doing always doing the right thing. We have lots of information available regarding the contracted services of our budget meeting with Oakland County Commissioners. So we're doing that. Our performance measures are set by the communities, like I said. Everything we do has to pass the muster of the communities we serve, whether that's directly through contract for their offices or the large interceptor systems that we operate and all those other things that we do for a larger rather than just individual communities. So we're always making sure that we're kept up with that. And also Eagle, formerly DEQ, all our things are regulated by the Eagle, so we have to make sure that we're meeting all their standards. And again, we always meet their standards. As a general rule, we're well above their standards. Now, has had an impact, mostly around safety for my staff, but we are working hard, and we've gotten significant PPE now. So we're pretty good with PPE. The hazard pay really helped a lot in the early months of this issue. Again, my office, right from day one when everything was shut down, we're out there because we have to. Nobody can go without water or sewer and all the things that we knew to make sure that they keep their health. So this is something that we have to do always, and safety is, for my staff, is the most important thing because we can't help everybody else if we're sick ourselves. So we've been with that, and so far we've had a few cases, but everything's been quite held back. So we're doing well. We've brought more electronic services. So now our building has been closed to the public, and we have not fallen back at all in our progress and all the things we do. So we're keeping up with what we need to do in a way that's going to keep our staff and the public safe. At some point in the future, we'll be opening up, and that's something that we'll be working with HR and facilities and all the groups within the county to make sure that we do this in the most safe, long-term way we can. We have we shut down shutoffs for non-payment of water bills a couple of weeks before the governor asked for it. We recognized that right away. People need water in this kind of situations. So we did that a couple of weeks ahead of the governor. When the governor gave her order, we brought in and we made sure that everybody within Oakland County had the water turned on. We only had out of the 70-odd thousand customers we service in one way or another, we only had 200 and something that were shut off that we had to turn back on. So it wasn't a huge number to start with, but so far we have not fallen tremendously back in our payments. So we haven't seen a large increase in accounts receivable. It's gone up a little bit, but nothing we were afraid of. So so far with the federal and the state help, people have been able to keep up on their bills. We want to make sure that that goes on for the future. So we're looking at new payment options. So people don't have to come to the office to pay. We're looking at, we've signed a contract with a company that's going to open up some of the local like 7-Elevens and some drugstores and things like that. So people can pay their bill right there at the store rather than having to come to an office. Part of that is also to have an app on phones. So this hopefully will bring a whole bunch more people to be able to pay from their phones and not even have to go mail or online or anything. So these kind of efficiencies we're bringing in to long term, we're operating even more efficiently than we were before all started. The COVID-19, we're working with the health department to make sure that everything's safe. We're working to start a program to measure COVID-19 evidence in sewers. So if long-term going forward, we may be able to identify emerging cases coming up before anybody else does. If we can pick them out from areas and go into those areas, this can help the long-term, public health within the county. So we're working with with the health department and outside groups to do this. And this is something that I think will help in the long run. Now,
Jim, forgive me. You don't have to go. You don't have to go through all these questions unless you want to. They're food for thought. If the committee is interested in asking them, you can do that, or you can continue. It's up to you.
Okay, I'm really kind of almost done. Okay. You ask about protecting the environment and sustaining our resources. That's what we do. So, I mean, this is our everything that we work on is towards those goals, and that's what we plan to do in the long future. Whether it's lead in pipes or PFAS or green ooze on 696, all these things, one way or another, we're involved with, and we're making sure that this is safe for our citizens in the environment. We depend on water in Oakland County more than most counties for our economy, and we have to protect that. So really, in terms of the last real thing that we work towards in the long run is the diversity of our office. And Oakland County, we all need to work on this. We need to look more like the communities we serve. And I'm looking to do that long term, and I know the county's looking to do that with to define some longer term projects for that. And I'm very interested in cooperating with that and doing whatever we can to make sure that we're the diverse workforce we need to be. I mean, that's pretty extra for me. And if there's any other questions, you know, one last thing in terms of diversity and all the things that we're going to be doing long term. I work a lot with everywhere from 3rd and 4th graders to high school students and the young professionals that we've been bringing into our office in the past 2 years. And this generation that's coming up is the most diverse generation in American history. And the people I've been working with in this generation have the dedication to environmental issues, to social issues that I have not seen in many, many years. And I think that this is going to be our saving grace. And I'm working to make sure that we're reaching out to this generation to make sure that we're filling in our people with this new movement that's happening. And I feel good about that. And I'm going to make sure that we work on that. So that's it for me. I'm done now.
Thank you. And I can attest, serving on the drain board, that he has a tremendous group of staff. They're very compassionate and dedicated to what they do for our residents in Oakland County. So I thank you for all that you do. With that said, Finance Committee, do you have any questions for our Water Resources Commissioner? Commissioner Middleton, and then followed by
Jim, in 2014, we had a flood event and a lot of local communities were involved, and they named Water Resources on those lawsuits. Is that coming to a conclusion, or are we still going to continue preparing for that?
Well, I'm kind of limited in what I can say on a court case like this, but we're working in a good direction. I think we're doing much better than we had been in the past, and I think we'll hopefully have some things done. And by the end of the year, we're looking to do that. You know, you never can be absolutely sure what's happening with a lawsuit, but we're working in the right direction. We've been working with all those communities all this time for 6 years, and this is actually the anniversary, isn't it? I think this is the anniversary of the rainstorm. So it's something that, as you know, once in the court, nothing is fast. And so we've been working on this within our organization and with all the communities that were also sued in this. And so we're working in the right direction, and I think we're okay. So by the end of the year, we should know something, and it'll be announced. So.
The cost of that, will that reflect to the George W. Kuhn watershed, or will it go through, come to the county commission?
No, this is through the facility and through the communities themselves, because they're also part of this. So they'll put in money, and this will put in money. Our fund is enough that we think we're okay. We don't see much happening in terms of, you know, added to the rates or anything. We should be fine within what we already have. So I don't see that being an issue.
Okay, you touched on, I was going to question about increase in charges, but you think we have enough reserve to cover that?
It looks like it is so far. So as far as I know so far, we shouldn't have to.
Okay, thank you.
Then I have Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, Commissioner, and all your great staff. I just wanted to bring up something that's become kind of a pet project of mine, and I've been working with Steve Korth regarding a comprehensive report on all the dams located in Oakland County. And he's been keeping me updated. I understand things are moving along and that you're working with the state, and even the state, even Eagle is getting more aware that they need to do something more proactive about these privately owned dams and seeing that they're maintained in good condition. So I just wanted to thank you for your staff being so great to work with. I'm looking forward to the report, and maybe you or Steve Korth might want to elaborate on that.
Steve, you want to say something? I think you'd be the appropriate person.
Sure, I can just mention, Jim, just referencing our call with the Eagles senior staff the other day. They brought up the issue of working on a program to provide financing for statewide private dams so people can do the repairs. And they had asked our office to take a look at the language to see if we can contribute in any way as far as how this program would work. Again, I think the key point would be grant funding rather than loans. And so we absolutely volunteered to partner with them and work on this program for these important part of our state infrastructure and Oakland County as well. So that was one of the things that Commissioner and I discussed with the state the other day.
Yes, and there's always been issues around dams, and my office, we operate and maintain, I think it's 36 dams for lake level or lake level structures, some of them dams, other things. So we do yearly, we do constant inspections all year, and then every 3 years we do a full inspection of every dam that we operate and maintain, and we have very, very good facilities. So our facilities are very good. There are a bunch of private wells and some other, private dams and other things like that in Oakland County. So that's what we're going to kind of investigate and see what kind of conditions they are. And then Steve said, what kind, if the state has some money available, maybe we can bring that in and do that. Before the big collapses they had a few last month, this was not something the public was very aware of, but my office has always been aware of it. So we do our work. But going forward, we want to make sure that everybody feels and understands that they're safe and these dams are safe. So going forward, we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help that happen. And I appreciate your resolution and your concern over that.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to add that whether it's a private dam or it's a water resources oversight dam, if something happens, people are going to be looking to place blame, and we however it happens, we don't want it to happen at all, whoever owns the water control structure. So I'm glad that we're finally looking into the private dams and making sure that excuse me, they're all up to snuff, so we don't have any kind of disasters like what happened in Midland here in Oakland County.
That's right.
Is that okay? Commissioner Gershenson and then Commissioner Markham.
Well, welcome, Commissioner Nash. It's great to see you as always. And I just want you to know how much I enjoy working with your staff. And I don't see your Chief Deputy, Ms. Barra here, but she's been a big help to me in many of my questions in the communities. Help me if I may have misunderstood this, but I recently read that one of our projects with Macomb got a AA bond rating. Did I miss?
The Macomb Interceptor Project, probably.
Right. And I know we have a AAA, and I don't think Macomb does. I just didn't know if that rating, well, first of all, if I'm understanding it correctly, and second, if that's related more to Macomb, which it has a significant larger portion of that than we do, if that's why the rating wasn't AAA.
I could speak to that, Commissioner. Typically, when we go into these inter-county drains with Oakland and Macomb, it is a standard procedure to use the lower rating if their two counties are different. So this is no different than what we've done in the past for the previous $180 million we financed. Standard procedures is what you saw here.
Got it. Thank you.
And as you mentioned, Commissioner Gershenson, they are about 2/3 of the cost of it. So.
Okay, you're done. And then I have Commissioner Markham next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Commissioner Nash and your team. I first want to say that I agree with your assessment of the next generation coming forward. Confession, old hippie here. And I have watched this for years and years. And since this latest group has come along, they are more aware, more motivated, and smarter than any of us have ever been in the past. And I have a lot of hope because of that. So it's interesting you mentioned testing for COVID in the effluent from the sewage, because I just read, I think there's a group out of Yale or somewhere else where they are doing that across the country to try and see if we can make this work. And I wondered if you were part of that study, because they said they were working with groups all across the country.
I believe that's the one from U of M. Isn't that right, Steve? That was, it was a professor that we've worked with before that we're doing the sampling with.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's a national effort throughout the country, and everybody's comparing notes and looking at lab procedures and identification, how you identify the virus and so forth. So there's many consulting firms that are going this direction, and we're trying to jump in as well with the facilities in Oakland County, making them available for further pilot testing.
I knew you'd be out there in the forefront of technology and trying to find the answers, so I really appreciate that. The one other question I have relates again to looking at the future and technology. You have talked in the past about generating biofuels of some sort from the wastewater treatment, and what do we want to do with that? It generates so much methane. What are we thinking going forward that we're going to do with all that excess methane that we're generating?
Well, that's great. I didn't actually mention this earlier. We are having a ribbon cutting in September, on September 24th. Lysel Clark, the director of Eagle, is supposed to come down and speak. We put in a new process at the wastewater treatment plant in Pontiac, the Clinton River Water Resource Recovery Facility. So we're going to be pulling about 4 times as much methane out of the solid waste that we used to, which reduces dramatically the amount of solid waste we have to dispose of, and produces enough methane that we'll be able to run the entire facility off the methane that we create in the processing of these solids. So there's also potential, if we can, in future years, we could add another stream of flow of energy into that and even produce more, so we could produce some that would go on the actual energy grid. So there's potential here that this is an ability to do this. It's the first in Michigan, the third in the country that process that will be starting here. And so this is getting resources out of the wastewater we treat. Previously, we landfilled the great majority of that solid waste, which cost $1 million, $2 million a year. So we'll be saving almost all of that right away, and using that as a resource rather than just something to dispose. So these are the kind of things that I think in 10 years, most wastewater treatment plants will be doing. So we can create energy rather than just using energy. And that's we can contribute to stopping climate change. Although we'll be using methane, it's not fossil methane that's entering our atmosphere the first time in 600 million years. This is within the atmospheric cycle. So this is just natural methane that happens when things break down. So this is a real good answer on being able to use a methane source that is not fossil fuels. This long-term, I think more and more people will be using this. The water sector uses about 4% of all the electric energy in the country right now, and we could instead be producing energy. I think that would be a major shift. So this is the kind of things we'll be doing in the future.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jim Nash and your team, for coming to budget hearings and all that you do to service our residents. I appreciate it, and thank you.
I appreciate it too, and I look forward to working with you guys for a long time. Take care.
Thanks. Are there any other questions to come before the Finance Committee? Any other issues? Seeing none,
Commissioner Zach, this is Lynn Sunkis. I just want to point out that the amendment list was distributed to your members. You don't have to discuss it or take any action on it. It's just if you wanted me to cover it briefly to let you know what it reflects.
Sure. Is everybody ready to do that, or you want to do it another time? What's the vote from the committee? You want to review right now? Yes, I'm seeing. Okay. You're on,
Okay,
Lynn.
so
Thank you.
This is the typical amendment list that we've had in the past. It's broken down into 3 sections. It's taking the beginning balance that's from the county executive recommendation, and obviously things don't stop once the recommended budget is presented. So their section A represents resolutions that have been introduced and adopted by the Board of Commissioners since the recommendation was made, and those are reflected on section A, items A1 through A8. Okay, and that's giving you, the summary is giving you the impact on the overall total budget, and then subsequent, there is a separate amendment page for each item that's attached, and they'll be referenced as amendment A1, A2, A3, etc. Section B is anything that's personnel related. So as the Water Resource Commissioners budget hearing just took place, during the budget recommendation process, there were a number of discussions that were still ongoing, and there was not a decision made by the administration at that point on some of their position requests that had gone through the budget process. Since that point, there was a determination by the County Executive Administration that 8 of the position reclassifications are being recommended and therefore are being included in section B of this amendment list. So in B1, it shows these are proprietary funded positions, reclassifying certain job classifications or positions that were already authorized. It's just, I'll call it reclassifying certain positions based on their needs of their operation. And after section B1, there are a couple pages that list out the various 8 classifications that they have requested to be reclassified. And then finally, section C represents amendments that are either corrections, cleanup amendments that need to be taking place that were either through a prior resolution or through the budget process. And this is also the section in which typically you would have members of the Finance Committee introduce items for placement and consideration during the budget wrap-up session. So right now there are 4 amendments listed in the section C, and these are, I'll call them cleanup or correction amendments. 3 of them relate to resolutions that were adopted since the recommendation was presented. C1 represents a correction to resolution 20225 for circuit court positions. At that time, we only had the budget year through 2022 open in our system. So that's what was reflected in the resolution. So this obviously that position request continues on beyond 2022. So we're just extending that and reflecting that on C1 as here's the impact for 2023. Again, that's utilizing the rate and classification as an offset. So no change to the bottom line there. On C2, the next amendment is clarification for a resolution that was for community home improvement. So with that, they accepted 2 grants related to CARES Act. One was $3.1 million for CDBG, and one was about $1.1 million for emergency home solutions grant. Now that grant funding period covered a multi-year period. However, it is one-time money. So the way the amendment was reflected had a year of 2021 through 2022. It's really just one-time funding. So we are removing it from 2022 as that's not an additional amount that needs to be appropriated or recognized. So that's just correcting that to remove that for 2022. And the same thing happened for item C3. Again, that brownfield redevelopment program grant acceptance covers a multi-year period, but the dollar amount for that grant is still $1 million. So it's not like we're going to get an additional $1 million in 2022. So that's being removed. Finally, for item C4 of the amendment list, the last page of the amendment list that was distributed, with the second quarter forecast that was adopted by the board in June. Again, at that time, we did not have all of the budget years open in the system. So that's just cleaning up the negative $5,000 for 2023. 2021 and 2022 were reflected in the second quarter forecast. So no significant changes are happening as far as, program or any other introductions of items. It's just cleanup items. And that's all I have as of a status at this point. We'll provide another list next week based on additional resolutions that have been since adopted by the board, and any other adjustments or cleanups that are necessary.
Do I have any other questions or comments about this? This is the standard ongoing, thing that we will vote, hopefully the end of the last August meeting, that we will do budget rec. That's the goal. Any other questions or comments from Finance Committee members? Pam, yes?
Would you like to receive and file this report, or?
Yes, I would like to receive and file. I need a motion to receive and file, please. Commissioner Middleton, supported by Commissioner Gershenson. Any comments or questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Anything else to come before finance agenda? Thank you, Lynn, for chiming in there. Anything else? Seeing none, let's close Finance Committee, and thank you, members.